Hey guys, today we're going to talk about deductive reasoning. So if you'll remember, inductive reasoning was reasoning based on patterns we observe. So deductive reasoning will be a little bit different. So deductive reasoning. So I just said this. Don't forget, inductive reasoning is reasoning based on patterns you observe. Like if you notice something happening, like your mom calls every Saturday. Today's Saturday, so you're going to assume she's going to call again or whatever. So inductive reasoning is reasoning based on patterns you observe. Deductive reasoning is reasoning based on facts or rules. Like, for example, say you're tardy to class 5 times. That 5th time, you know you're going to get a detention because that is a fact or rule at the school. So inductive reasoning is just patterns. Deductive reasoning is based on facts or rules. Okay, so we're going to have to determine whether or not this is inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning. Every time Emma has worn her favorite socks to a football game, the Tigers have gotten at least 1 touchdown. Emma's wearing her favorite socks to a football game, so she concludes that the Tigers will get at least 1 touchdown. So do you think that would be inductive or deductive? Is that a pattern? Or is that a fact or rule? That would be inductive reasoning because it's just a pattern. She notices it. The Tigers might not get a touchdown. You never know. Okay. If Jimmy is late making his car insurance payment, he will be charged a late fee of $50. Jimmy's payment is late this month, so he concludes he will have to pay a late fee of $50. Is that a pattern or is that a fact or a rule? That would be deductive reasoning because that's a fact or a rule. So on your assignment, numbers 1 through 7, you're going to have to decide whether it's inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning. So number 1, Taryn noticed every Saturday her neighbor mows his lawn. Today is Saturday, so Taryn concludes that her neighbor's going to mow the lawn. Would that be a fact or a rule, or would that just be a pattern? I hope you said pattern, so that would be inductive reasoning. You can just put an I for inductive and a D for deductive. Since you're doing it on a worksheet, sometimes it helps to change the color, so when I grade it, I don't just see, like it's hard for me to find the answer, but if you change the color of the, like right here, if you change the color, it'll help me see it, so please do that if you can. Okay. Students at Jackson's High School must have a B average in order to participate in sports. Jackson has a B average, so he concludes that he'll be able to participate in sports. Do you think that's just a pattern, or is that a fact or a rule? That would be a fact or a rule, so that is deductive reasoning. So I hope that helps in telling the difference between inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. So just ask yourself, is it a pattern or is it a fact or a rule? I guess I have a couple extra examples. What do you think about this one? Harrison is late to class every day. So Miss Geiger concludes that Harrison's going to be late again today. Would that be a fact or a rule, or is that just a pattern? That is a pattern, inductive reasoning, because he may actually be on time. A person must have a membership to work out at Genesis Gym. Hong works out at Genesis, therefore, Hong has a membership. Is that just a pattern, or is that a fact or a rule? That would be a fact or a rule because you have to have a membership in order to work out there. By the way, that's where I teach workout classes. All right. So now let's talk about the law of detachment. So you're going to be given a conditional statement, which is an if-then statement. Then you're going to be given a detached statement. You're going to have to try to decide what the conclusion would be. So for example, if a car is out of gas, then it will not start. Skylar's car is out of gas, so what can you conclude? Well, you can conclude it will not start. So very important here, you can always only ever conclude the then part. You can only conclude the conclusion, which is that then part. Never try to conclude the if part because you can't conclude that. You can only conclude the conclusion. Okay. Let's see. If it rains, then the ground will be watered. It's raining today. What can you conclude? You can conclude that the ground will be watered. If an angle is acute, then its measure is less than 90 degrees. Angle A is acute. What can you conclude? That its measure is less than 90 degrees. So only conclude the then part. Okay, if it's snowing, then the temperature is less than or equal to 32 degrees. The temperature is 20 degrees. You cannot conclude that it is snowing. So this would be no conclusion. Never, ever, ever conclude the if part. Don't ever conclude the if part. It could be just really cold outside. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's snowing. But if it is snowing, then we know the temperature is at 32 degrees or less. So I hope that makes sense there. Let's go to your assignment. So number 8 says, if a student gets an A on a final exam, then the student will pass the course. Ben got an A on the geometry final exam. So what can you conclude? Well, you can conclude he will pass the course. So remember, you can always only conclude the then part. If a student wants to go to college, then the student must study hard. Emma wants to go to OSU. What can you conclude? Well, you can only conclude she must study hard. So remember, you can only conclude the then part. So don't ever try to conclude the if part. So let's move on. So we'll have to determine whether a conclusion is valid or invalid. So the best way to do that would be to look at the conclusion and make sure that it goes along with the then part of the statement. So this one says, if a number is divisible by 6, then the number is divisible by 3. 18 is divisible by 6, so I can conclude 18 is divisible by 3. So divisible by 3 goes along with the then part, so that is a valid conclusion. Valid. So let's look at the next one, number 13. If a pet is a rabbit, then it eats carrots. Lydia's pet eats carrots, so I'm going to conclude that Lydia's pet is a rabbit. Well, notice the conclusion, pet is a rabbit, goes along with the if part. You can never conclude the if part, so that would be not valid. You can only conclude the then part. Just because Lydia's pet eats carrots, well, it could be a turtle, it could be a horse, it could be something else. So never conclude the if part, only conclude the then part. All right, moving on. Okay, last but not least, we're going to talk about the law of syllogism. Actually, not last because we still have Venn diagrams, but law of syllogism. So this just gives you 2 statements or 3 statements, and you're going to take out what's repeated and write what's left. So let me show you an example. If a number is prime, then it does not have repeated factors. If a number does not have repeated factors, then it's not a perfect square. I guess it's just 2 statements. So notice the repeated factors does not have repeated factors. If a number does not have repeated factors, is repeated. We take out what's repeated and we type what's left. If a number is prime, then it's not a perfect square. I kind of abbreviated there. So if a number is prime, then it's not a perfect square. I just took out what's repeated. So let's look at those. So number 17 says, if an animal is a red wolf, then its scientific name is Canis rufus. If an animal is named Canis rufus, then it's endangered. So do you notice that the Canis rufus stuff is what's repeated? That's what we take out. Scientific name Canis rufus, scientific name Canis rufus. So you write what's left. If an animal is a red wolf, then it's endangered. So that's how you do that. Take out what's repeated. Now let me show you what happens if, like, look at number 21. 21. If you interview for a job, then you wear a suit. If you interview for a job, then you update your resume. Well, if what's repeated is two ifs or two thens, what's left over doesn't make sense. I wouldn't write a sentence that says, then you wear a suit, then you update your resume. So that would be no conclusion. You have to have an if-then statement left over. So that's no conclusion. Now the next one, you would have a conclusion. If Kenton has a grade point average of 3.5 or greater, then he will be on the honor roll. If Kenton is on the honor roll, then he will have his name in the school announcements. So the honor roll stuff is what's repeated. Then he'll be on the honor roll if he's on the honor roll. So I do have an if-then statement left, so I could write that. I would write, if Kenton has a grade point average of 3.5 or greater, then he will have his name in the announcements. So I hope that helps with that. Now, last but not least, we're going to talk about some Venn diagrams. So if you ever see the word and is where the circles overlap. If you see the word or is when you just add everything up. This or that, just add it all. But and, you only look where the circles overlap. So this says, how many students work after school and on the weekends? So and, you look where they overlap, that would be 3. How many students work after school or on the weekends? You add them all because these 5 work after school or on the weekends they work. The 3 work both, so they do and or the other, and the 17 work on the weekends. So you add them all. 17 plus 3 is 20, plus 5 is 25. So or, add them all, and is where they overlap. Let's go to, you try this one. I want you to try this one. Go to this one. How many students like country music only? So do you see that 17 there? That's the ones that only like country music, because these in here like some other stuff too. So you would put 17. How many people like all 3 kinds? So that would be country and rap and rock, so all of them. So 7 is where you've got the rap, the rock, and the country, so that would be 7. Yeah. How many people like rock and rap? So rock and rap, and is where they overlap. You're going to look at this right here. So you're going to have the 7 and the 11 together, which makes 18. How many people like country or rock? So or, you add them all. So country or rock, you're going to add 18 plus 11 plus 8 plus 7 plus 17 plus 1. The only number you don't add is the 24. So I hope that makes sense for Venn diagrams. Okay. I also want to do this very last problem with you because it's a little tricky. So this is kind of like a logic puzzle, and I love logic puzzles anyway. So let's look at this together. So let's see. Okay, so this says if Maria drinks juice, then it's breakfast time. If it's lunchtime, then Kira drinks milk and nothing else. If it's mealtime, which mealtime could be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. If it's mealtime, Curtis drinks water and nothing else. If it's breakfast time, then Julio drinks juice and nothing else. And then the very last statement says Maria drinks juice. So go back to the top. If Maria drinks juice, what time of day is it? Well, it has to be breakfast time. So you have to think that it is breakfast time for every single one of these questions. So the first one says Julio drinks juice. So we're going to determine whether it must be true, may be true, or not true. So Julio drinks juice. Let's find Julio. This says if it's breakfast, Julio drinks juice and nothing else. So that must be true. because it is breakfast time. The next one says Curtis drinks water. Let's find Curtis. If it's mealtime, Curtis drinks water and nothing else. Well, breakfast time is mealtime, so that would be true. The next one says Kira drinks milk. Let's find Kira. If it's lunch, Kira drinks milk and nothing else. But do we know about breakfast? She might have some milk at breakfast. That would be maybe. Then Curtis drinks juice. It says Curtis drinks water and nothing else. So that would be false. Maria drinks water. This says it says if she drinks juice, it's breakfast. Can she have a glass of water on the side? Does it say she drinks juice and nothing else? So that's a maybe. Julio drinks milk. Let's find Julio. It says if it's breakfast, Julio drinks juice and nothing else. So that would be false. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.